Good morning, my beautiful babes and babettes. I've only ever been able to snap with this hand, which is weird because I'm left-handed. But I am your resident active advocate, and I am here today to tie up some loose ends about the book Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Yesterday, because I forgot how loaded this book is, yesterday I addressed more or less the good aspects of this book and, the positive takeaways about its portrayal of people with autism and how they are able to function in the real world and how they can do things independently. And, it's not fair to master status them as just because they're neuroatypical as being lesser than just because they're different, right? So that was the general trajectory of yesterday's video. But in this book, there are also very negative portrayals of autism as well, embodied in the same character. So when it comes to Christopher, while he is very intelligent, and as I said, very mathematically intelligent, the whole problem with his portrayal of autism is that he is seen as having no friends and no social skills. And a lot of the time in the more mainstream portrayals of autism, mathematical and logical skills are seen to be comorbid with a lack of social skills. So it's like you can only be good at this one thing, but you definitely can't be good at this other thing. I don't fully agree with that portrayal, especially since it is a stereotype and it is another form of master statusing. You can master status for either positive or negative traits. When it comes to defining someone by just one trait that they have, but working within that trait to say that this person is X or Y or Z because they have this one trait, there can be positive aspects of that as well as negative aspects of that. So with Christopher, the master status positive is that he has these mathematical skills and he's brilliant with logic and deductive reasoning. The negative master status is that, quote, all people with autism struggle with social relationships. That is not a very nuanced approach, and not everyone is going to fit within that lens, obviously. So that is problematic problem number one with this book. Problematic problem number two is that Christopher has been in the past and even in the present in this book both emotionally and physically abused. And you see this in flashbacks that he has about when his parents were still together, because his parents are divorced in the present day in which the book takes place. And in his flashback, you see that his parents largely blame his autism for them splitting up because, the whole idea of disability is going to be too much to handle for anyone in your social group, and this includes the people who are closest to you. It's this whole idea of if you are born with any kind of disability or any kind of neuroatypicality, you are not going to be able to take care of yourself. People are going to have to take care of you. And that is an extreme strain on people's mental well-being and social well-being. Your parents can't have a social life, and I'm putting quotation marks around all of this. Your parents can't have a social life because you were born different. In a very passive-aggressive kind of way, it's basically saying that this is your fault. And that lines up with the, quote, moral model of disability, although in a more present-day sort of sense. In the ancient sense of the moral model, it was that you were a curse on your family for the family having done wrong. With the more updated version of the moral model, it is more a case of you are at fault for what has happened to you if you were disabled in an accident, or you are simultaneously at fault if you were born with a disability and don't know how to handle it yourself. And the problem with this updated version of the moral model is that it comes into contact with the most negative aspect of Western culture, I find, which is the extreme emphasis on you must be independent. You must be operational on your own without any help whatsoever. And while in the real world, I really do support the notion that people are complete units unto themselves, I do not support the notion that if people need help, they should not seek help just because they are complete units unto themselves. We need one another. We're still a social species, even though independently and individually we are complete, we are whole. I didn't mention this in the Gathering Blue video, but that quote I really love from Gathering Blue, or actually it's from a later book in the series, but it's the same character saying to her friend, I am whole. You know, there's the whole idea of disability making someone not whole, making someone not functional as an independent unit. And therefore, they need all this help, and oh, what a struggle, and oh, what a strain on society and on their social unit. You know, it's a very negative kind of nuance around the idea of thou shalt be independent at all costs. I don't agree with that aspect of Western civilization. I'm not saying that we should all meld identities into one another's and be codependent. There's a difference between codependency and interdependence. So we need to be interdependent and rely on one another, but not rely on one another to such an extent as we lose our own identities as individuals. So that's another aspect of the book that I failed to address yesterday. The next aspect is that Christopher himself master statuses, that's not a verb, but I'm treating it as a verb, other people around him who are neuroatypical, but in different ways than he is. People with intellectual disabilities that are, quote, lower functioning than his own. And he will look down upon other people whose brains do not function in, quote, the normal way, but also in his normal. You know, everyone has a different definition and a different basis for what normalcy is, which is why I always put quotation marks around that word, because there's no, you know, homogenous, omnipresent sort of norm. There can't be, because we're all different. But Christopher holds other people to a higher standard than he holds himself. And he believes that, you know, because he is hyper intelligent when it comes to mathematics and logic and deductive reasoning, that why can't everyone do this? And why can't everyone be like me? And I'm the smartest person in this room. And all y'all need to step up your game, and be like this. That is also coming into communication with his portrayal of his lack of social skills. It is basically saying that he also has a lack of empathy for other people, and that is a fault of the portrayal of autism, not a character flaw on Christopher's part. There's a lot of books where in the meta narrative, it's like the author is saying this and using the character as a conduit to say this. You see this all the time in narratives about people, let's say, with certain political views or certain religious views or certain views about, you know, how society, quote, should function. They will use their characters as their own voice box for how they believe things are done or should be done, and how things are laid out in front of them. So in Christopher's case, it's basically a way of saying that autism is fine up to this point. Neuroatypicality is fine up to this point. But if you are, quote, below that standard, then you are, I hate this word, subpar. quotation marks, of course. Right. So that is Christopher's general conceit about other people who are, again, quote, lower functioning than he is. There is no normal. I want to emphasize this point. Therefore, it is not fair to hold people to, like excessively high standards, especially if they are neuroatypical to the point where they are unable to learn in a structured classroom or in the traditional setting, which is basically sit down, shut up, and listen to me lecture at you for 3 hours. This is especially true once you hit higher education. But in lower grade education as well, this is also true because it is preparing you for higher grade education, and it is also preparing you for the job market. But it's an antiquated model because nowadays a lot of the jobs that we have require neuroatypical skills, shall we say. This, this excess of logical skill, this excess of creative skill that you cannot be taught. You kind of have to have it or don't. It can be fostered if you already have it, but our school systems are not set up so as to foster these skills unless it is a purely mathematical, logical, scientific kind of skill that you have, because those are the skills that our school systems emphasize here in the West. But were it Christopher's talent to be in art or in music or in movement, he would have less luck than he does in the school system, because the neuroatypicality, the range of neuroatypicality, and this is why I say that it's not beneficial to put limitations on what the range, quote, can be or should be. The range that is, quote, allowable is within the logical realm rather than the creative realm, and it's Christopher himself that is saying these people ought to be more logical, like me. So those are basically the nuances that I missed out on in my previous video. And I don't want to frame Christopher as this horrible human being, because he really isn't. It's, I think, more of a fault of the meta-narrative. So unfortunately, that is basically the package deal that we get with the character of Christopher. As I said yesterday, though, read the book and try to pick up on the nuances for yourself and interpret them in your own way, because I'm not here to say you should interpret a text in this way, in my way, because this is how my brain works. Your brain works differently. No such thing as normal. Thank you. All right, so I will see y'all tomorrow to talk about, I believe the bird is, the book. I believe the book is called The Someday Birds, and this is a really, really good one, so you're going to want to stick around, because I like it. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Mwah.